Welcome back. We're mourning the Queen, and everybody is mourning. Yesterday, somebody sent me a message said, "Well, why is the Anglican Church in Ghana having a memorial for the Queen of Ifenim?" Well, if you didn't know, a bit of history and a bit of facts. The Queen of England is the head of the Anglican Church. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the spiritual head of the Anglican Church. So if the Anglican Church in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Mozambique, in Kenya, in Uganda, wherever, they have a memorial for the Queen, it is the head of their church who is dead. If the head of your family is dead, you have a funeral. So it is their head of their church who is dead, and that is why they have a funeral. So know this if you didn't know. The Queen of England is the head of the Anglican Church worldwide. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the spiritual head of the Anglican Church. I finished. I just educated you if you didn't know. But we're going on Zoom now, and we're going to have a conversation about the Queen. And I just want to talk to people who do Arishis Kuntumil Flow. You understand? Founder of Black History Month, UK, and former Special Projects Coordinator, Greater London Council, and Research Assistant to Lord Eric Avebury, Chairman of the Parliamentary Human Rights Group. Also, John Ofei Ansa, he is a publisher, African Briefing Magazine, and Dipo Oyewole is a journalist, a strategy consultant, and public affairs analyst. Also, Ludwig Nee Jr. is an author, Untangling Process, resident, United Kingdom. Gentlemen, good morning, welcome.
Morning.
Today is a very, very pensive day for us, I should say. Let me start with you, first of all. Ichaba, how do you feel today?
Oh, I feel quite good and emotionally quite good. And mourning with the people of Great Britain because they've lost a mother. And as tradition demands of us as a Ghanaian and an Akan, death in a family is something that you take very seriously and you mourn with the family. So I am expressing those same sentiments that have been brought up in terms of my culture.
I see. John, what are your sentiments?
Well, the sentiments are no different from those of Echaba Adesibo. Some of us have spent more than 3/4 or 2/3 of our lives in the UK. And we all see the Queen, as Echaba said, as our mother. You know, more so, she's a symbol, she is a glue, you know, that holds the UK together. You know, the UK comprises 4 nations: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And a few years ago, Scotland tried to break away. You know, they had an independence referendum, and they, by a very narrow margin, they decided to stay as part of the UK. Okay, and we all know what happened, you know, in Northern Ireland in the 70s, 80s, you know, so the mid to late 1990s. And even now in Wales, there are some small pockets of agitation. So the Queen actually was a glue that, you know, held the whole United Kingdom and Northern Ireland together. And her passing, you know, has been greatly, or the loss is being greatly felt. You know, I've been glued on TV for most of the time, and people queue, you know, some queued for as long as 24 hours to view, you know, the body at Westminster Hall. Okay, yeah, and the last person actually to view the body and pay her respects, was a middle-aged lady, who did that about just before 6:30 UK time this morning. So that's up at the outpouring of grief, tells you, what a great woman she was for UK, or not only for UK, but for the world at large. And as we speak, there are more than 200, 250, heads of state and government in London for the funeral. That tells you her importance to UK and to the world at large.
Deepo, what's on your mind?
Good morning. Interesting conversation. Yes, I mean, passing of the Queen, very, very touching, especially for the people of the United Kingdom and the people of the world. But I mean, as you also know, there have been mixed reactions, mixed feelings from different parts of the world with regards
to that. People want to see that you are in London and it's a landmark. So it's more the landmark.
Are you a news channel as well, are you?
Yeah.
Deepo, go ahead. Danny, you have to mute Ludwig for me. Yeah. Deepo, go ahead. Sorry about that.
All right. Yeah. So, like I was saying, mixed reaction.
No, it shouldn't be a problem.
Which country?
We're in Ghana.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're reporting to Ghana.
Yeah. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just would it
I'm sorry about that. Technology. Danny, mute Ludwig for me, and then Deepo can continue. Deepo, fire on my brother. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So different reactions from different parts of the world with regards to her passing, the life she lived, how impactful it was, what it meant to different people all around the world. But like it has been said, I mean, it's a death, it's a passing. That's another human being. No matter whatever you may feel about her or misgivings you may have, it's still the passing of a person. I lost my own grandmother a couple of years ago, and I know how I felt about that. So, yes, it is an interesting conversation. But for me, I'm quite interested to see how the entire United Kingdom move on from this. And like the gentleman that spoke before me said, Scotland tried to gain independence a few years ago, and it was a very, very narrow margin that referendum that it passed. Some of us are looking to see if that will be brought up again, maybe within the next 18 to 24 months, and to see what the results will be. But it will be an interesting turn of events.
I see. For your brothers and sisters in Nigeria, how are they mourning or tagging along this funeral?
Well, for a lot of people, really, like I said, mixed feelings. A lot of people are indifferent. There's another group of people who have misgivings with our colonial history, and they say that she was the great colonizer. That's, we've had a lot of that rhetoric around. And there's some people that feel some sense of loss. But yes, mixed reactions, mixed feelings around the passing of the Queen. But I mean, like I typically say, everyone has a right to how they feel, depending on the perspective they try to look at issues from. So that's the temperature, or that's the feeling right now in Nigeria with regards to the passing of the Queen.
Interesting. John, let me come to you now. So for those of you who have lived in the UK for quite some time, a very, very long time, I should say, how does this come to you, knowing that the sovereign and the monarch who reigned for 70 years, got on at age 25, is going to be laid to rest today? What hits you?
Well, it's another file. To me, it's an end. It's the end of an era. Nothing in life. The only constant in life, they say, is change. So there's a change taking place. We have a new King Charles. I mean, people are even still trying to get used to singing the national anthem.
God save the King.
Yeah, we all knew God Save the Queen. And so people are trying to get used to singing God Save the King. So it's a new dawn, a new dawn. It's a change, and Prince Charles, King Charles, before he became king, actually was very vocal, on a lot of issues, especially environmental issues. I mean, and that went against the grain because the royal family, were not supposed to, to vocalize, their views on any matter at all. They had to keep their views private. But Charles, when he was prince, did that. I mean, he started speaking about environment long before it became a global issue, right? So now that he's king, we will see whether he will go against the convention, and keep on airing his views. But the conventional wisdom is that he will not do it. Because he said a few years ago in an interview that, and I quote him, that I'm not stupid. I know, my role will change. So we'll see how he, performs as a king. Also,
Okay.
I believe that his mother, is going to be a very hard act to follow. Don't forget that Charles, I mean, his mother didn't come to the throne with any baggage whatsoever.
Right.
King Charles comes to the throne with a baggage. I mean, notably, what I mentioned earlier, him vocalizing on issues, and then his divorce from the late Princess of Wales, Diana, and the events that followed. It took him marrying, the current Queen Consort now, Camilla, but it's taken a long time for the British public to accept, even Camilla as the Queen Consort. And it got to a stage when even people were calling for Charles to step aside for his son, Prince William, to become king, so that Charles will be a regent. So it's a new change. So we see how there's going to be a honeymoon period. But after the honeymoon period, we will see how the British public takes to him as king.
Right. Ludwig is joining us. Ludwig Jr., Nee Jr. is the author of An Unentangling Process and also is a resident in the United Kingdom. How are you doing, my brother? Ludwig, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. How are you doing this morning?
All is well. All is well. Yourself?
I'm alive and well. I'm greater than Accra. Where are you standing now?
So we're standing just by Parliament behind me. Hello, guys. You all right? Just listening. You can get involved. You want to get involved? We're reporting to Ghana. Yeah. So we've got some in Accra. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Super. Let's talk to them.
They want to have a chat.
Hello. I've never spoken to anyone in Ghana. How are you?
We are fine. How are you two?
Just an hour behind. Oh, well, I hope you really enjoy this ceremony today. I think it's going to be amazing. A real period of history. I'll leave you with your person.
Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. You always have a way of bringing us fresh stuff.
I try my best.
I see you are in your funeral, your mourning clothes already. What's running through your mind?
Can I get you a bit louder, please? Because I'm outside, we've got helicopters flying
Sorry.
about, so it's a bit loud.
I see you are in your mourning clothes already. What's running through your mind?
I think, morning. I think today is, for many of us, however you feel about the Queen, I think one of your guests said earlier on, today is a day of mourning. And for me, it's actually real in the sense that when the Queen's coffin came to London, that's when it hit me that actually, Scotland is just down the road. But not down the road, it's not far from here. But today's a day of mourning. Everybody, you can't see, but I'm literally on a path where people are walking past me and everybody's dressed in black. The time is now 8 a.m. in the morning or so. And yesterday I couldn't stand here because there was a big queue of people. If I show you the path, so all this path here was full of people. And on the other side, where I have to come away from the big pool of people, because that's the press pool over there. So all this road was, this path was full of people going across the bridge, going all the way around and back into where the Queen was lying in state. So today is the day of mourning, and it's really an end of an era. And regardless of how you feel about it, it's an end of an era. We all know the Queen, and things are going to change. And these are changes that for some of us, we may not see, and for others, they may see most. So it's a day of mourning, and even the birds are coming to feed. I don't know why someone's giving them food. So if you see me moving, it's because the birds are flying over my feet.
Right. Chaba, I'll come to you now. You are a curator of Black history in the United Kingdom. What kinds of conversations are the historians having regarding the Queen, her passing, her legacy, and her life and work?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well, I am not really aware of any conversation going on at the moment because everybody is caught up in their own mood. There are a lot of issues being raised with regards to the Queen, the reign, because 70 years has covered the life of most of us in terms of our age group in the 70s and all that. So we spent our whole lifetime being with her. And under her, a lot of things have happened. And you see that the structure of the, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. What is fascinating and coming out of this whole process, to me, as a historian, as an analyst, is the British state and the whole issue of democracy. Because if you have observed over the past 7-8 days of mourning, you've not heard, or I have not heard anything about the government, about the cabinet, about the Prime Minister, Her Majesty's government. They are not involved. And all that you see is the church, the palace, and the armed forces. So that has touched me, because who is really in charge of the country? It is not the people through their elected representatives, but there is a monarch with the army, armed forces, and also the church, because the Queen or the monarch is the defender of the faith.
Right.
Is the defender of the faith. And it is the Archbishop who is going to do the investiture and crown the king.
That's right.
You see? And then if you look at all what has been going on, those is the armed forces, those bearing the casket, those surrounding the casket, everything around you see is the military.
Right.
It's the military. And not a single, I haven't heard anything about the Prime Minister or Her Majesty's government. And that is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And also what is interesting is that there was no space in between the Queen dying and then the ascension of Charles as a king. There was no space, no interregnum. It was smooth transition because their system has said that you know the one who is going to succeed from birth, you know. So we all knew.
Okay.
And if I contrast that with our system, that is very fascinating to me also. So there was not a moment of doubt, not a moment of debate. You just accept it.
My
That
brain.
is the structure.
I see.
And so that is, to me, that is the historical significance of it.
I see. Let me go to Deepo. Deepo, one more time. Welcome back. So, for those young Africans who have read the history books, have seen that the British colonized most of the countries in Africa, they are livid and angry, and they don't even want to hear a word about the Queen or the British monarchy and celebration thereof. What do you say to them?
Well, personally, like I said earlier, to each his own. Everyone has a right to their emotions and how they choose to feel about it. But personally, like I've said in the last couple of days, where we'll be having this particular conversation with different people on air, off air, I have said that whatever misgivings you may have about our colonial history, we are where we are right now. And unless we're able to see our colonial history as an event that happened to us, like every other event that happens to different people in different phases of their lives, and understanding that as an event that happened in the past, we are where we are today, and what we do today is what determines our future. That for me is what is the most important, and that for me is what I'll say they should hold on to. Yes, they are. A lot of people are livid. A lot of people are very upset. But the question is, you're livid, you're upset. Then what next? What are you going to do after that? What will that array of emotion? What is it going to communicate? What are the outcomes you're looking for after communicating or transmitting that type of emotion? So that for me is the important thing. We must focus on the outcomes. And the outcomes for me is for us to be able to say, this is where we are today. We must be able to make deliberate decision that our future must be better than where we're coming from. So that for me is the important thing. I'm a very outcome-driven person. Results is what matters, results.
I see. Let me go back now to John. John, or maybe Ludwig. Ludwig, so you've been living in the UK. You have Ghanaian ancestry. I'm sure you've had conversations about reparations, sorry about that, and also compensation. But then at the heart of it, there's the Commonwealth. What do you say? How do we marry the two? Hello, Ludwig. Hello, Ludwig. Ludwig, can you hear me? Sorry. Let me throw that to John then. John, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you all right, yes.
So, our President of the Republic has been talking about reparation, and other Africans have been talking about compensation. But then we have a Commonwealth where we can all sit at a table and have a conversation and discuss what's good for Africa and what's not good for Africa. Where do you stand? How do we marry the two?
Let me refer to what Deepo said. He said it's outcome driven, result driven.
That's right.
Right. We have our colonial past. Events happened in the past. We are here today. Okay, so we look forward. There is a Commonwealth. We talk about these reparations, issue of reparations began long ago. Even in America today, they are talking about reparations to the African Americans. But one has to be realistic, right? This is arguable, but I believe that it is a mirage.
Right.
Talk about reparations. I believe it's never going to happen. Okay, so what we need today as Africans is good leadership, good governance, leadership that will serve the people, that will have the welfare of the whole nation at heart, not leadership that comes in, to sell themselves. Okay, look, we have China in Africa today, and I always say that China is not, I'm digressing a bit, I'm sorry. China is not in Africa because they love Africans, but because the Africans have something that they need. And it is up to our leaders to be aware of that and leverage that need that the Chinese have, that need that they have, leverage it to our advantage. Are our leaders doing that effectively? So they should stop talking, should be realistic, and stop talking about reparations. Reparations ain't gonna take us anywhere.
Most African leaders will disagree with you on this one because they've been talking about it at least in the last year or two, and they've been very emphatic about the fact that whatever sins were committed in the past must be atoned for. So this your tone will not sound melodious to them.
I'm sorry. We have to be I'm talking about realism here. Okay. Look, let me give you an example. There's a topic trending of late, the Benin Brothers. Some of them, I think, university, one of the Oxford colleges, have returned. Some of them, a museum in London has returned some of the Benin Brothers, and so has a German museum. Okay. Ask me how long it's taking. How long it's taking for Britain, Germany, and the rest to return this Benin bronzes back to Nigeria? They saw the bronzes. They were forcibly taken away. We're talking about the Elgin marbles from Greece. Do you know how long the Greek authorities have been negotiating with the British authorities for the return of these marbles? The marbles are still in the British Museum. Okay, look, we talk about the Mau in Kenya.
Right.
They suffered some atrocities and they had to go to court. It took years and years of litigation for them to win some compensation from the British courts. So we have to be realistic, right, and divert our energies towards good political and economic governance to lift our country's economies, to lift the economic situation of our people.
I see. So now I come to you, Echaba. Is the Commonwealth still significant?
I belong to the school of Kwame Nkrumah, and later on, I think in the late 60s, he came to the conclusion that the Commonwealth is an anachronism. And I share that because it's just for the British monarchy, for them to feel good about themselves and the empire. So it's a nostalgia for the British monarchy, and particularly for the Queen. And but I would like to touch on the issue of reparations. I support reparations, and I've been involved in this for quite a long time. What John is saying translates to that our Africa governments, we are weak in terms of power relationship. If Germany can pay reparations and Poland is asking for $1.something trillion of Germany for reparations, And so reparations is something that is not new. Other people that have been affected have been able to demand reparations, and they've got their reparations, however symbolic. So it is the weakness of Africa and our leadership that has made it nearly impossible for us to deal with the issue of reparations. If you recall the meeting in South Africa in the early century, the early 2000s on all human rights and the reparations and all that. Yeah, Obasanjo went and basically spoke against reparations. So it is our undoing, our weakness. We have to force it. And if we're strong and we know our sense of self-worth and we are still not subservient to the British or the former colonial masters, then they will respond to the issue of making amends or even apologizing. The simple spiritual and moral duty of apologizing for wrongs done. We are celebrating and marking the death of the Queen. So I have to be a little bit careful because reparations talk about a lot of hurt. I'm mentioning the Mau Lumumba, look at how Lumumba was killed and the body cut into pieces and put in acid. And the British were behind this. Look at Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah had just been with Harold Wilson almost about 10 months or so, but unknown to Nkrumah, they were stabbing him in the back. Because on February 22nd, when Nkrumah was leaving for Hanoi, both President Johnson and the Prime Minister of Britain, Harold Wilson, they were deciding whether he should be killed at the airport before he embarked on the plane, or he should be killed when he should be allowed to leave and for the coup to take place. This was what Her Majesty's government, Prime Minister, and the President of the United States were discussing and talking about killing another head of state. So the issue of reparation, what the British and they have done, the Germans, the Belgians, and all that, they have to be able to. But look, you have the Queen or the monarch as the defender of the faith and the head of the Anglican Church. And they taught about confession. I'm not a Christian, but they taught us about confession. But they can't confess and for their sins to be forgiven. Who are they? What are they trying to tell us? Who are they? So the issue of reparations touches a lot of nerves. Thank you.
Thank you. Ludwig, welcome back.
Thank you.
What more can you add? What more can you report from where you are standing? I know you are closer to the action. I'd like to get the actualities from you.
So the time right now, it's just gone past 8 and the service has started. So if you give me a couple of minutes, let me give you exactly what is happening so we can get proper timeline. So at the minute, so like I said earlier on, everybody was out here yesterday queuing up for the Queen. That finished, Queen's finish line in state, that happened at 8 a.m. this morning. So at the moment, the time right now is 8:42 and people are making their way into Westminster Abbey, which is just literally across the road from where the Queen was lying. And then the church service, oh, you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
You're
And then-
broadcasting to the whole Ghana.
Okay, so no, just making sure you can hear me. And so at 11 a.m., that's when the service will start. The Queen Line instead will actually move from, like I said, into Westminster Abbey at 10:44. The Queen's coffin will be lifted and taken into Westminster Abbey for the funeral service to start at 11. So everyone's making their way. So I think as we're speaking, and as you guys were speaking this morning, I was showing you some pictures of people walking around and wearing their funeral clothes, as it were, and they were all walking past this way onto the bridge and go around into the church because some of the roads are blocked that way and some people are only making it this way. So that's where we are. And then after that, the Queen will be taken by 142 sailors who will be pulling the state gun carriage, carrying the coffin, and that will take the Queen to Wellington Arch, in Marble Arch, down the road. And then after that, we're looking at around 11:55, and then the national anthem will be played. There'll be a 2-minute silence. 12:15, we should be at Hyde Park Corner. And then from then on, we are looking at the route to Windsor. So around 3 o'clock, the Queen should be at Windsor. So that's the rough timeline that we have at the moment.
Right. Are the shops open or closed? I'm just asking, playing the devil's advocate.
So today's a bank holiday, but shops are open. So you will never get a bank holiday that shops are not open. So most shops and businesses are officially closed, but you have little shops or, I guess maybe kiosks that might be open, but generally nobody's working today as a mark of respect to the Queen's funeral. So there is no official work per se.
This must be a very big blow to the whole of England.
It's a huge blow, and there are conflicting views as to if things are difficult, do you need a bank holiday because people need to work and pay their bills? But at the same time, it's the Queen has passed away. It's an end of an era. The Queen has been very, very influential in many things over the many years. Positive, and other people have other views on that, on whether everything has been positive. So there is also that. But in terms of, there is no way there would not be a funeral for the Queen. That would never happen. There is no way that the Queen's passing is going to be something that's going to be done over a few days and it's done. This is a huge thing. This is a big blow. This is something that many of us have known for all our lives, and it has to be celebrated. And the fallouts will happen in anything. There's positives and negative, and also time for reflection and learning. So we have to take what we have to take from it in terms of, I know we've been speaking about what should happen in terms of some of the atrocities that's happened around the world. I am in agreement with one of the colleagues who mentioned economic governance. I think if you want to help, if you want to change the narrative of Ghana, Africa, you need to understand economics, okay? And I think for many people, they don't understand the economics. We have to park our money in foreign currency that devalues our currency. That's the first and foremost that everyone needs to understand. Our money, our debts, when we go and borrow money, we don't borrow money in our currency, we borrow money in other people's currency. That means that every single time we have to pay back, we're selling our currency, which devalues our currency and also makes it more valuable for other people's currency. So reparations, economic governance, all those are great things. In terms of, should we push for reparation? Yes, why not? If if wrong has been done, and we need to make sure that, we set an example, even if it's symbolic, because it's how people understand what needs to be done, rightly or wrongly. So I believe that the right things need to be done, but economics is the first point that we need to start. Improve education, improve production, improve producing so that we reduce the imports. And once we get those things done, I think we'll be on the right path to do that. But generally this morning.
Thank you. Depo, are we not crying more than the bereaved?
I believe so. Well, I'd like to echo the thoughts of the other gentleman talking about the reparations and the economics of it all. So yes, reparations should happen. But like Jonathan said, is it realistic? Now, the reason why it isn't realistic is what Achaba said, because we need to understand that in the end, when we're talking about economics, finance, global power, global conversations, we need to come to the table from a place of power. You do not go to a negotiation table from a place of weakness, which is why these conversations have taken almost forever, which is why in some quarters they're not even taken seriously. Some people see it as being symbolic, and they will keep having the conversation and keep stalling it out to make it remain symbolic instead of it being actionable. So where am I going with this? Earlier, I talked about outcomes and focusing on where we are right now so that we can move forward. We need to be in stronger places, especially economically, if we want to have these conversations, not just about reparations, but having conversations on the global stage. Because there is no reason whatsoever why the nations of Africa should not be taken a lot more seriously than we're being taken right now. But either we like it or not, it does all come back to the economics of it. Ludwig made a fantastic point. We want to borrow money, we borrow money in the currency. We keep doing things that devalue our own currency. We keep doing things that show that we do not respect each other within our own nations, even across the border. How are Ghanaians treated in Nigeria? How are Nigerians treated in Ghana? How are South Africans treated in Kenya? How are people from Rwanda treated in the Gambia? Until we take issues like this seriously, how we treat each other as one, we must see each other as one, speak with one voice, move in one direction, and be deliberate about how we want to craft our future as a people. Not just as a nation of Nigeria or as a nation of Ghana, but as a race. That is what I'm most particular about. Because we must move forward from the conversation of, oh, this happened to us. Yes, it happened to us. So where are we going from there? As a child, you went to maybe primary school. It was an event. It was a phase of your life. Do you then keep going back to say, okay, so the reason why I don't speak very good English is because I went to, my parents took me to a bad primary school, or maybe they didn't pay for my primary school education. Now you're an adult. You should be able to take responsibility and be accountable for where you are right now and be responsible enough to take action. So for me, moving forward, we must be able to see how we can strengthen our economies, because that is the only way anyone can take us seriously. It's the same thing even in boardrooms. You go into a boardroom, you come from a position of weakness, you're not taken seriously. You're given a bad deal. It's just basic human nature. There's no animosity about it. There's nothing mischievous about it. It's just basic human nature. And in the end, we're talking about global affairs, global politics, and how things are run on the global scale. It is about approaching issues and conversations from positions of power, from positions of authority, and not positions of weakness. We have the power.
Right.
We have the resources, human and natural resources on the continent. We should be able to maximize it and see how we make the most of it.
Right. John, let me bring you in now. So there's conversation ongoing about young people being given an opportunity. The Queen ascended onto the throne, of course, by bloodline at age 25, reigned for 70 years. What can Africa learn from it? Because the whole small boy, small girl syndrome seems to put a lot of young people in a certain hole or doldrum that they are not able to rise to the very top to shine and be brightened up. What do you say, John?
Let me begin by quoting this cliche.
Right,
But it's true. Age is just a number.
right.
And I'm going to give a personal example. I operate from London. My webmaster is in Accra. My work bastard is young, it's about the same age as my youngest son. I do because he knows the technicalities. I'm a journalist.
Right.
I'm not an IT person.
Right.
So when I'm confronted with an IT question, I pick up the phone and call it. Right?
Right.
So I'm giving you a microcosm of what should happen nationally. In Africa, you find someone, maybe the official retirement age is 60. Instead of making way for somebody to fill this position, they adopt other means, so on and so forth, to stay on. Okay? Instead of teaching the young ones, those below them,
Right.
Yeah, the ropes, they get scared, they feel intimidated. Maybe the senior maybe didn't go to university. The new entrant in the workplace maybe has a master's degree. The one, he feels intimidated by that. So he will just frustrate him along the way, right? And that doesn't make for progress. We must encourage, look, the future it belongs to the leaders, to the young, okay? So we must encourage them. If we don't lay the sound foundation, okay, our future will always be in ruins.
I see. And how do we get around it? How do we surmount that hurdle? That's my question.
Okay, look, number one, I remember Tony Blair when he was in office at Downing Street. He had these three words, key words: education, education, education. Okay, and not just any education. We must give our children quality education. Okay, and encourage more technical education than the arts. Read history, read this. I mean, education that will benefit the country in the future. You see, so these are some of it. And again, create conditions. Look, it's a multifaceted approach. Look, we must encourage the private sector. I always say that the business of government is not to engage in business, but to create the necessary conditions for business to thrive.
Right.
So the government must create the right environment, right, for the private sector to thrive, right, so that they can create more jobs for school leavers.
I see. Ludwig, the last time we spoke, you told me about mentorship, about affording young people an opportunity, and I know you have business interests in Ghana. You have established and employed people. What do you say to what John has said?
I think what John has said goes a long way to alleviating some of the issues. The country as a whole, as we are in Ghana, we are not yet there in the position of training young people. So what tends to happen is that many young people get to be trained a lot later. So you tend to find that you get somebody who has to get a master's degree to do what can be like a cashier in a bank. Effectively,
Right.
The person goes into the bank, to collect money, they put it into the till, they give you a receipt. But we don't trust our young people to do that from maybe JSS or SSS. They have to go and get a degree to do that. So if you look at what it is they are doing in the bank, they are effectively just assistants collecting money and putting it in a system. They are not doing anything that requires a degree to do. But because we don't have confidence in our young people and we don't have confidence in our systems, we expect people to learn so much to do so little. We need to have a situation where we are giving young people coming from SS into the banks, come in from a younger age, learn on the job from a younger age, so that as you get older, they are able to also get into their head that it is normalized. It is normal to train people at a younger age. We have not normalized training young people at a younger age. We train people at a much older age, and then they follow the same thing through. That's why, as the gentleman said, somebody's due is a retirement age, but they don't retire because they are not used to an environment where we're training people at a younger age. So we need to learn and change the culture of training. Training has to start at a younger age. And like I said earlier on, at 15, everyone gets a 2-week work experience to go and find out what work is like. That is not something that's going to cost us money to do in Ghana.
Right.
All we have to do is change the culture of how we do that. And I think, like I said, training is the best way to do that. And let's do that at a younger age. Let's have more apprenticeships. Let's have people in the position where they are thinking of work at an earlier age, so that we're going to have a youthful population who can grow and support our economy.
At what point did we lose the plot or miss the plot? Because if you look at the likes of Dr. Nkrumah, was 47, 48 when he won independence for Ghana. Dr. Buzia, or Professor Buzia, look at them. I mean, there were people in their youth, largely, who stood up to the powers that be or that were at the time, and they won independence for us. They governed. Today, like you're saying, nearly every young person is doubted. How do we cross over?
I think we cross over by those who are doubting the young people, and those who are doubting the young people are those who have got influence to employ the young people. So if you are listening to the show right now and you're in a position of employment, and you're in a position of training, and you have not got, if you don't have young people in your team, if you don't have young people supporting you, if you don't believe in young people, then effectively what you're saying is that you are going to run your business or your organization with people who are using old ideas. And maybe because people are afraid of young people and the fact that they've got energy and they've got creative ideas, and they may do things that are a bit unorthodox, because maybe there is also, maybe there's a bit of, possibly a bit of laziness in terms of wanting to find out what's happening from the younger generation. But whatever it is, we're in a position where those who are in a position of influence, those who are in a position to train people, are not comfortable with training young people, because young people will challenge you. They will do things that you've never thought about. They will have ideas that may not make sense to you. But if you are going to go through the path of success that you've only known, and you're not willing to diversify, then you may not be in a position to change. So I think, if you're, as I said, if you're in a position of influence, if you're in a position to train young people, and sometimes training young people doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give them a full job. Just give them the experience to see what it is that you do, how you do it.
Right.
Get their opinion about how you do stuff and see what they bring on board, so that they can also go out with that confidence. And once you have confidence, a lot can happen.
Chaba, let me come to you. Would you blame the questions that Ludwig and John have asked and answered, and the narratives they have created on our educational system?
I see it as an honest critique of my generation. And I am not pleased with what my generation has done to Ghana. And I am very, very bitter, because if you look at the state of the nation from 1982 to the present, when my generation took effective power, and we were young. We were young, in our 30s, 40s, just as Nkrumah were, and his colleagues were. And we took effective power over life and property. We exerted power that no other regime had ever been able to exercise that power. We were not questioned. People disappeared, we educated people, killed people and all that, but we were still the darling of the World Bank, of the IMF, of the Paris Club and all that. They poured money into our hands, and though we mismanaged them, but they still held on to us. So I always question, what has my generation done? The damage that my generation has done to this country is something that has to be studied. And if something has to be discussed openly, because how can the University of Science and Technology, Tech, how can it become almost a liberal arts institution? How? And this has been under our watch. So who are we training? The younger ones? We are not. How can you be teaching religion at the University of Science and Technology? How can you be doing that? And that is my generation. And again, my generation, you come into power and you set up a divestiture implementation committee to divest the country of its industrial and manufacturing assets. And if you do that, you have put the country in a state of permanent unemployment. Because if you are not producing the majority of what you consume and you are importing, you have placed your country in a state of permanent inflation. And that is what has happened. And we have done that. My generation has done that. And it's that kind of wickedness that I don't understand. I just don't understand, because we enjoyed from Nkrumah generation what they did. They offered us the best. They produced an educational curriculum, an educational support to us. And when you finish the university, you have a job waiting for you. They sent us out to the best universities in the world, all over. And we went and saw how people ordered their societies. And we come back and hold power, and you have places like Abogloshi and all that, and the Accra and Kumasi, the filth surrounding us. It's a disgrace. My generation is a disgrace. And you need to whip us. And look, Osafo Mafo, what business do you have to be involved in government? Or NADO? Or what business do you have? And what have you proven all these years? It shouldn't be. So you should drive us out, just as. So the situation that we are in is exactly like what the British did with us. The British destroyed our economy. The Western region was a rice-producing area, and they destroyed it. So the British destroyed the economy so that we be dependent on them. And the same thing is that we are doing what the British did. My generation, that's what it is. We are doing what the British did. And that is what we have to see. We have to look at it very serious.
Chama, thank you very much. You've spoken passionately, and I started a campaign, let the retirees go and let the young grow. Dipo, I come to you now. The Queen is on record to have brought a lot of economic development to her people, especially when she took over a lot of challenges, but she surmounted most of them and brought economic development to her people. Under her watch in our country now, we have the Gladysbergen economy, our rail lines, our hospitals, Kolebu Teaching Hospital. They're a testament of what she has done for us, and in many other countries, Nigeria, Uganda, name them. Are African leaders as focused as the Queen was, even as young and naive as she was at 25, getting on the throne by bloodline?
Unfortunately, I don't believe our leaders are. Because what we see is a huge gap when we're talking about visionary leadership. We've been talking in the last couple of minutes, like 15 minutes, we've been talking about the youth, the future, and education. if you look at a lot of African countries today and you look at the educational sector, it is something to mourn about. In some parts, the educational sector has been defunded. In some parts, a lot of institutions at different levels, they're on strike. In some parts, there is one huge challenge or the other. If you want to know how serious a nation is and you want to know what they believe their strengths should be, look at how they invest in education. Because the future of any nation that is serious, they would know that it is their youth. And how they choose to invest in their youth is how we are able to determine where they want to be. But unfortunately, that's not what we've seen in terms of how a lot of our leaders on the continent have chosen to lead. Like someone said earlier, age is just a number. I mean, she ascended the throne at 25, 26, and we have a lot of our leaders who get into government at past 40. But unfortunately, they come into power and it seems like they don't have any clue whatsoever as to what they're supposed to do there. For me, I say that governance isn't that difficult. It isn't rocket science, because if you go in there with the right frame of mind and the honest intention to improve the lives of people, because in the end, that's what you're supposed to do as a leader, to move your people from where they are to where they ought to be. Right. Either it's economically, either it's financially, either it's educationally, either it's politically. Whatever it is, or wherever you find yourself as a leader, you must be able to move your people from where they are to where they ought to be. And how do you do that? You're able to look at what you have as the resources, human resources, financial resources, natural resources, and see how best you can maximize it. I mean, these are things that we do in our organizations. There are certain persons you don't put in certain roles, not because you don't like them, but you know that at that particular time, they've not been able to develop themselves to build capacity for that role. So you put someone who's the best fit for that role, because if you put the other person, they'll be costing you money. So it's really simple. Right. Is it true that the government isn't, the business of government isn't to be in business, but can we run governments like we run our businesses? And then we see better outcomes. But unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing the visionary leadership that we need. And we're not seeing the visionary leadership that should match the level of potential that we have on the continent. Africa has so much potential. So much potential. Watch Africans when they leave Africa, they go to Europe, they go to America, they go to different continents. See how we thrive over there. Because there are systems that work. So the question is, why can't we develop systems here that work so our people can stay here, make our nations thrive, and by extension, make the continent thrive? See. Gentlemen, let's wrap up the conversation this way. I'll start with you, Ludwig. So what are your closing thoughts?
We have to believe that we've got people to do what we need to do.
All right.
And we also have to believe that with the right support and with the right collaboration, we can move forward. These conversations are going to happen for a long time, but let's give the youth a chance. Let's let them understand that we trust them. And also, if you are in a position of influence, make sure that you're bringing young people through. The situation about governments not wanting to change countries, I don't think that's entirely true.
Right.
I think what happens is that when you get into government, there are other forces that stop you from doing what you have to do. And I think that comes from those that we owe money to. I think there are conditions attached to loans that we, the public, don't know, the citizens don't know, that we'll never know until we get to government, because it is not by coincidence that every single government knows what the problem is until they get into government and they can't fix it. There's something that's bigger than that. And I think those people that we owe money to, those countries that have got influence over us, have got a bigger power that is not being shared. And I think we all have to get hip to the game that there's something bigger going on, and we are not going to know until you are in government.
Right.
Because it doesn't make sense that we don't grow our own food. Okay. We've got big empty land in Ghana. we don't grow our own food. There is a reason why we don't grow our own food. I don't think we're allowed to grow our own food. And we have to get used to the fact that we are being told what to do and what we can't do. And those are some of the things that our government can't tell us, because if the citizens knew that we actually are not that independent, I don't know what might happen. So for us, we have to understand that as citizens, as private people, let's look at the gaps. What is it that is making us not move forward? So we talk about the things that we import a lot. If we import many things as citizens, where can we put our efforts into plugging the gaps in the areas and the things that we import, that to make sure that our currency is not always going down because we're importing? Because if we're importing toothpicks and we have a production of a company that makes toothpicks in Ghana, then we don't have to import it anymore. So let's look at the gaps. Okay, let's look at the gaps where we can plug ourselves as citizens, and also to those in charge, support the private sector to make it buoyant, so that many of us out here, abroad, come home and do what we have to do to support our country, because we want to do that, and for some of us, we do that.
Right. Thank you. Uncle Chaba.
We have to look at the relationship between the state and the government, executive. The state structure that we have inherited remains colonial. If you look at the laws and all that, they stretch back to the British period.
Right.
So if you look at the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. So the executive has become like overseers. You have in the plantations, in the Caribbean and the US and all that. So those plantations belong to the landed who live in London and Brussels and Paris and all that. And they have overseers running. So in the same structure that we have now, that the present executive that we have in Ghana, they are just overseers of the colonial structure. So there's the need for total structural adjustment. We have to throw away the whole colonial structure. And that is the crux of the matter.
Right.
And it is my generation cannot do it. It is you, the young people, that have to do it. You have to be concerned about power and take power. Organize yourself and take power. Just as my generation, we organize ourselves and seize power through a coup d'etat on 31st December 1981, and we have held that power up till now. So you also have to organize yourself and be mindful of power and take power and bring about change. But when you are bringing about, it's not just the executive. It's not that the executive, but you have to change the whole structure that has entrapped us into a plantation.
Okay.
That is where we are. So that is the responsibility of your generation. But my generation, you can't rely on us. You can never rely on my generation.
I hear you.
Don't.
I hear Uncle Chaba. Depo, let me come to you, and then I'll go to Senior John for final thoughts.
Yes, so my final thoughts, like I said earlier, we need to determine the outcomes. Where do we want to be as a people, not just as Nigerians, not just as Ghanaians, as Africans, as people of the Black race? Where do we want to be? Do we want to be people of relevance, or do we want to keep being victims? Who do we want to be when we're talking about different conversations, when we're having different issues being discussed on the global scale? We are strong people, we are brilliant people, we have the resources, we have everything we need to thrive. We must look inward, irrespective of external forces or whatever external challenges we may be facing. We must be resolute to say that as a people, we have to thrive, not just survive.
I see. Senior John, you have the last word. What do you say?
Okay, two things: leadership and mindset. When a fish rots, it rots from the head. And mindset, unless we as Africans, we as Ghanaians, unless we change our mindset, precious little will change for us. So look, somebody is spending profligately. A civil servant built 1, 2, 3 houses. Do we question the source of his income? He's a civil servant. How could a civil servant build 2, 3 houses, but we rather glorify them? A businessman runs a very small business. He's put up a mansion. We glorify them. A poor guy gets political office, and within 3 years, he's driving a V8. His girlfriend is driving a brand new SUV. He's put up 3, 4, 5 mansions. Do we question them? So until we change, there's one occasion during one previous administration where an MP was arrested and jailed for cocaine smuggling in New York.
Right. Samoa thing.
Thank you. What happened? Somebody in Parliament tabled a motion to extol his virtues. Come on. When the guy was released and sent back to Ghana, as we say in our language, Yegudishre, yes, Yegudishre, not because he'd come out of prison, but because he was their benefactor and he had come back, so they had to go him that shre. Please. So unless our mindset changes,
Right.
if I came to Ghana today, my laptop got broken. I went to the shop to buy a new laptop. I see made in Ghana. I see made in Korea. I see made in UK. Instinctively, my mind will switch off the one made in Ghana.
Why?
And then debate which to buy.
Why?
Made
Why?
in Korea
Why
or
would
made
that
in
happen?
UK.
Why would that happen? Why would you do that?
It is the mindset. We've been conditioned. It is the mindset. We've been conditioned to look down on what we produce. Listen, there's a Kantanka vehicle manufacturing in Ghana. I don't know whether it is Kumasi or Accra. How many people buy Kantanka? How many government departments and ministries or agencies use that Kantanka vehicle? I don't know him from Adam. I don't know Kantanka from I've never met him before, but this is it. So until we change our mindset, precious little will change for us. And we need leadership. In Africa, in general, we have a leadership conundrum. So until we have good leadership, able leadership with integrity, leadership that has the welfare, like I said earlier, the welfare of the nation at heart, please, precious little will change for Ghanaians and Africans in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ludwig. Thank you, Depo. And thank you, Uncle Chaba. Grateful that we could have this conversation this morning. I'm very delighted. We're mourning the Queen, but also, like we say here, once you cry, you pause, and at some point you blow your nose. What consensus must be spoken about. And speaking of which, we'll bring you a conversation with His Excellency Emmanuel Victor Smith. He's a former servant of the land of Ghana to the United Kingdom. He will join us shortly with